Hello, everyone, and welcome to the District 4 Candidate Chat with Jason Dozier. Today, we are so excited and honored to bring this conversation to you all in the community. We all here believe that it's important to vote, and it's also important to vote informed. So at this point, we want to welcome you all, and we hope that you're excited and ready for a great conversation. This program is presented by ACLU of Georgia, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Pi Alpha Omega Chapter, and Protect the Vote GA. My name is Hannah, and I'm honored to serve as the executive director and co-founder of Protect the Vote GA. And we, again, just want to make sure you all are getting ready to vote. Early voting starts on November 17th, which is tomorrow, aka Wednesday, and it runs all the way through the 24th. Of course, Election Day is on November 30th, which you can also vote in person. So vote, 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 and tell 5 friends to vote, because we want to make sure we show up and we show out. At this point, I want to turn it over to our wonderful moderator. And before we do that, I do just want to read her incredible bio so you all get a little idea of who will be moderating today's conversation. Chandra Farley is an activist at heart and credits her parents with instilling a sense of duty to allow her to do what she can do to advance justice and fairness. Currently, Chandra serves as the CEO of Resolve, a consulting practice with a mission to increase the impact of energy and climate policy and programs by creating equity-centered delivery infrastructure. Chandra also founded the Good Energy Project with a vision to connect the transformational power of Black women to the movement for just and equitable clean energy. Chandra has formed national partnerships to improve the environmental and financial sustainability of nonprofit facilities and developed equity-centered strategies to advance energy and climate justice at local, regional, and national scales. Also serves as the co-chair of the High Fund for Climate and Gender Justice Advisory Board, chair of the Georgia NAACP Environmental and Climate Justice Committee, a graduate of the EPA's Environmental Justice Academy, president emeritus of the Environmental Justice Academy Alumni Association, and serves on the board of directors for ACEEE Community Movement Builders, Georgia Conservation Voters Education Fund, the People's Justice Council, Alabama Interfaith Power, and Lights and Greenlink Analytics. A strong bio, wears many hats. We welcome you, Chandra. At this point, I will pass the floor over to you to kick off the program.
Thank you so much, Hannah. I really appreciate being invited here to moderate tonight, and I'm excited about this conversation with Jason Dozier. I would like to let everyone know that both candidates for this seat were invited to a virtual forum. However, due to scheduling, the incumbent, Clea Winslow, was not able to join, but ACLU Georgia recognized the importance of continuing with this event, now billed as a community conversation with the candidate that was available, Jason Dozier. So welcome, Jason. I will give you 2 minutes to introduce yourself and tell us why you are running.
Thank you all so much for having me this evening. As was said, I am Jason Dozier, and just once again, I just really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all. I know as we get close to the runoff election, schedules are short and people are getting pulled in a million different directions, but I wouldn't wish to be anywhere else but here with you all this evening. First and foremost, I am a husband and a father and a homeowner, and I'm proud of the family that I've grown in the community of Mechanicsville here in Southwest Atlanta. I'm also a proud Atlanta native. I was born at what used to be Georgia Baptist Hospital, born right off of Boulevard, raised on the east side in South DeKalb, raised by a single mother. And she is really who instilled in me these values of public service and selfless service. And my whole life has been centered around service, first to our country and now to our community. As a combat veteran, I served in the Army for 6 years. That included more than 2 years leading as an officer in deployments to both Iraq and Afghanistan. And professionally for the last 9 years, I've grown a national nonprofit from 15 employees to 120 employees. I know that helped tens of thousands of military veterans and military spouses find good paying jobs across America. I've also served on the boards of the Atlanta Bicycle Coalition, Advance Atlanta, the Beltline Tax Allocation District Advisory Committee, the Turnerfield Community Benefits Coalition, the Entrenchment Creek Community Stewardship Council, the Mechanicsville Civic Association, and in various roles across Neighborhood Planning Unit V. And it's because of these diverse experiences, I believe that I'm uniquely qualified to take Atlanta's challenges head on. And so today I'm proud to join you and sit before you as our candidate for Atlanta City Council District 4. And as our city council member, I will fight to make our streets safer. I will fight to make our community safer. I will fight to slow down these speeding cars that put a lot of our families' lives at risk. and I will fight to make sure that you all as residents, as citizens, as neighbors, have the best and most direct access to our city than you ever had before. And I truly believe that as our next city council member, I'll be the strongest ally and advocate our neighborhoods have ever had. And just want to say once again, thank you so much. And I look forward to our discussion this evening.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jason. Definitely one of those challenges here in the city of Atlanta is around affordable housing. We've heard a lot about affordable housing the last few months and few years. In your own words, what is considered affordable housing?
Yeah, and they're my words, but I think they're the words of a lot of people who study this issue very intently. And usually the discussion is centered around roughly 30% of someone's take-home income. That includes utilities often, and largely this conversation is shifting to also include transportation costs. But it essentially is 30% of what you make, and or more specifically, what you take home. And I think that affordability just is so. Our perception of it differs from person to person. I know as anything involving funding from the Department of Housing and Urban Development, you get into these calculations around area median income and 60 to 80%, 100 to 120% AMI. But I think as we talk about what is affordable housing, what is housing affordability, it's based on the individual. And for a lot of our families, even though the city and the metro area and the state and the federal government might say that this unit is affordable because it's for 80% AMI or 100% AMI, that's for a family making $60,000 a year or roughly therein. But the median income of families in my neighborhood in Mechanicsville is $25,000 a year. So it's not affordable for them. So affordability is tailored to, in my opinion, it needs to be tailored to the individual household. And we need to make sure our policies are aligned with that definition, that 30% of what you bring home.
Thank you for that, and definitely that definition around housing burden, around that, if you were increasing above 30%. So like you described your neighborhood, your home neighborhood of Mechanicsville. Let's say once an individual has found adequate housing, how would you prevent and work with landlords to stop them from increasing the rent each year, considering that state law allows rent increases at the will of the landowner?
Yeah, one of the things that has been, and you hit really the nail on the head, that we need more policies aimed at protecting our renting population. Something like 65-70% of Atlanta residents are renters, and that number gets even higher the further into Southwest Atlanta that you go. 90% of my neighborhood in Mechanicsville are renters, and most of the policies that we have centered around affordable housing protect homeowners, legacy residents. We think about the grandma or the great grandma who's been in their family home for generations. These are true stories, but they don't really affect the majority of people who are going through this housing crunch that we're experiencing right now. And one of the things that we aren't doing is recognizing that a lot of our landlords, I get that the Zillows and the BlackRocks of the world are buying up a bunch of properties and leasing these properties and at such high dollar amounts that it's hard for people to find affordable housing in Atlanta right now. A lot of these properties are owned by folks who maybe own the house next door or own the house across the street. So mom and pop, effectively mom and pop landlords who wanted to get some extra income, and they're trying to fight against these high tax bills. I think landlords like that ought to be able to qualify for homestead exemptions so that they can keep costs low for their renters. But separately, we need to provide more assistance to the renters themselves, because recognizing that not every landlord out there is a good faith actor. We have organizations like the Atlanta Volunteer Lawyer Foundation and Atlanta Legal Aid and the Housing Justice League, because a lot of our landlords in this city don't operate in good faith. So we need to make sure we're advancing tenants' rights. We have to make sure we get services directly to the renters themselves, whether it's direct payments. That's something that we were able to do with the funding that we received from the CARES Act and from other programs tied to COVID-19. That should be a great example of what we can do going forward. And I know that money is drying up, but the city should be looking for ways through the general fund or through our housing obligation bond to fund direct assistance for renters so that they can cover costs of rent, so they can cover costs of utilities. So no individual policy is going to solve that challenge, but working together, whether you're providing homestead exemptions for landlords or providing subsidies for renters themselves, working together, we should be able to help more renters stay in their homes. And right now, we don't really have any good policies for renters at all.
you lifted up when we entered the conversation about affordable housing, renters, we talked about 30% of income above that being what we refer to as housing burden. Directly related to the ability to be able to afford housing is the ability to afford your utilities when you're in housing. And nationally, most people spend about 3.6% of their monthly household income on utilities. That's electricity and gas. Here in Atlanta, we are one of the most energy burdened cities in the nation, and some areas of the city, including Mechanicsville, NPUV, and those surrounding areas in the South, pay upwards of 3 to 4 times of that. What would be your solution around addressing the energy burden?
Yeah, I think part of that is what I described before in direct utilities assistance for families in need. But the other part of that is making sure that the city is working with institutions or organizations like Georgia Power as a partner to make sure that we have a much more robust mix of renewable energy in that mix. You know, relying on coal power is expensive. And unfortunately, it's not sustainable. And so you get into these other environmental justice, environmental injustice issues, making sure that we can have renewables tied to solar, tied to wind, and making sure that is more common across the city of Atlanta, I think is something that the city can do right now. We have a number of city properties that we have 817 acres of city properties that are sitting vacant, unused, and we can make sure we can have solar panels and other renewables tied to those properties, especially when we have these sales to developers who want to come in and build multi-story high-rise, require them to have renewables as part of their energy mix. But separately, I want to see the city invest in subsidies for families to get them off the grid so that you can have solar, so you can have opportunities for wind, especially for these larger developers that have larger acreages. And we're just not doing enough on that front. I think there's an opportunity to make sure that we can put money in people's pockets. If you have a solar panels on your house, you can sell that money, that energy back to Georgia Power and get it back in the grid and reduce some of that cost burden. But I think making sure that Georgia Power is a partner. We're in a agreement with them for the next, I think, 40 years in terms of them being our provider, our energy provider. So it has to be a partnership. But sometimes we need to have advocates fighting for us at the state level to make sure that they're doing their part to lower costs and to make sure that renewables are a much more robust part of the mix. That means, I'm not saying the city has to get involved in state politics, but as constituents, as citizens, we need to make sure we're electing the right people as public service commissioner, make sure we're electing the right people in the Georgia Assembly. And as a city council person, I'm going to fight for our city to do the right thing, but I'm also going to fight for our state to do the right thing as well, to protect our residents who are burdened by these high costs.
Thank you. Important point about broad cross-sector collaboration to tackle these huge issues. And also, Atlanta is home to over 1/3 of the state's homeless population or unhoused population. Many of them find shelter most nights, but many of them, over 2,000, are considered unsheltered. How are you planning to address this issue with the multi-layers that are involved with the unhoused population in our communities, and how we can address this issue towards putting an end to it?
Yeah. So I think the first thing with anything is to address the triage side. If folks are unhoused, let's get them into housing. I thought that what the city did with the old Ramada Inn off of Hank Aaron Drive was a great way to showcase how the city can partner with private interests to get housing for homeless people in a very critical time. For those of y'all who don't know, the city worked with the Ramada to, and I don't know if it's still flagged as Ramada. I just know it as Ramada. I've always known it as Ramada, but but it was used as essentially as a homeless shelter during the big part of the early push of the pandemic and through the winter as well. And to provide a safe and stable place for our unsheltered population to not only have a roof over their head, but to also receive services that they need, particularly around mental health and around drug abuse. And I think that is so key for our unsheltered population to get the help that they need. If you don't have a permanent address, it's hard to get those services provided to you. It's hard to get the benefits that are owed to you. A big part of our unsheltered population are military veterans, and many of them are due several benefits from the federal government. But then think about the fact that when we all got those stimulus checks last year and part of it this year, many cases, those checks were mailed to physical addresses or put in people's bank accounts. And when you're unbanked and when you don't have a physical address, it's tough to get even those benefits. And those things can mean life or death for many people. And so getting people housed first can address a lot of these underlying issues when it comes to getting our unsheltered people the help that they need. But to that effect, the main tool that we have as a city right now is the pre-arrest diversion program, which I really appreciate the work they've been doing over the last several months. They're not funded enough to do the work that they really need to do to help people who are in need. Operating from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday doesn't truly really get at the crux of the issue that we have with helping our unsheltered population. And so I want to see it fully funded. I want to see it their funding triple so that it can be fully funded and fully staffed so they can operate 24/7, so that when we talk about triage, they can do the work that's necessary to get people into supportive housing. I support building more housing across the city. And I get that is a very politically tenuous thing to say. I know a lot of our neighbors have pushed back whenever either supportive housing or homeless shelters were proposed in their backyards. I think part of that pushback has been, especially in Southwest Atlanta, the concern that the Southwest Atlanta communities bear the brunt of a lot of these social programs, these social housing programs, especially with concentrations of affordable housing, concentrations of public housing, and people want Buckhead and Midtown and East Atlanta to bear their share of the burden as well. And I agree with that. We need to have these services citywide because not every unsheltered or homeless person in the city lives in Southwest Atlanta communities, lives in District 4, lives downtown. We need to make sure that we're doing this. If you spread it out and have smaller facilities that have maybe not as many beds as we had at Peachtree Pine, but have enough to where you can house enough people in that community, it makes that our ability to provide services to those people a lot easier. Their caseloads are smaller, and it's just safer for everyone around. And I want to see those sorts of models that brought here into Atlanta. And I think there's opportunities for partnerships with private organizations. The office market has just cratered because of the pandemic. Let's work with some of these office developers or office managers to find ways to use their spaces for housing. If the city's involved, then the city can provide a degree of there's a word I'm looking for, but it can help make sure that folks are being safe and are in places that they can be safe, and just kind of think outside of the box. But get people housed first, get them the services they need because they're housed, and the city should be more aggressive on that front, especially more so than we have been. And I get it, all these other municipalities, localities across not only Georgia or the Metro Atlanta area, but also across the Southeast send a lot of their homeless or unsheltered populations here to Atlanta. Just because it's inconvenient for our city doesn't mean that we shouldn't do the work to get those people the help that they need. And I think that we need to be working more in partnership with our development community to make sure we can get them the help they need. I think about the fact that you get off a Greyhound bus and you're at Garnett MARTA station and there's nothing available. Let's make sure we have services right then and there at our points of entry for our city. Other cities have done it. We should be able to do it the same way.
Thank you, Jason, for that. And we are, it's just the two of us in this conversation. And this has been really great so far. So I need to plug in my laptop and you may need to grab a drink of water. And as we both do that, we're going to take about 2 more of our prepared questions, and then we're going to open it up for community questions if we have those coming in.
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk. We dived in a little bit in your last answer around diversion programs. You've mentioned this. And just last week, Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms held a press conference on the establishment of a Center for Diversion and Services that will provide alternatives to placing people in the county jail and city detention center who suffer from behavioral health issues. Why do you think it took the city that is plagued with homelessness and mental health issues so long to come up with this kind of plan?
I think it's honestly, we have people in leadership positions in the city who are afraid to think outside the box, who are they might vote Democratic in state and federal elections, but they're not progressive when it comes to quality of life issues and really thinking holistically about how do we solve these issues that have been really affecting our city for a long time. You have people who, unless we bring the Red Dog unit back, feel that we're not doing enough to address crime and public safety in the city. You have people who think of homelessness as something that is going to make it harder for us to present ourselves to the world and to attract another Super Bowl versus the really human-centric, needs-based focus that this issue really needs. And I think it comes with a way of thinking that has, unfortunately, when we think about the Atlanta way and thinking about, the business community having an outside influence on our political community, it's a continuation of that. But I do think that the tide is changing. The fact that we even were willing to have the discussion around changing the Atlanta Detention Center or destroying it and making it something new or reimagining public safety in a much more meaningful way. And that these were conversations that the mayor and her administration have been a part of and have been supportive of, I think suggests that the activist community, the organizers who are focused around issues of criminal justice have just done such a great monumental job of having these conversations and having them in such a meaningful way that we're getting some good policy out of it. The fact that the pre-arrest diversion program even exists suggests that this administration and certain members of city council are willing to look beyond just decades old models of public safety, which is hire more cops and give them carte blanche to do whatever they want to make sure crime goes down, whether it's the broken windows policies that we saw out of Giuliani's administration in New York City, or some of the more heavy hammers type stuff we've seen historically in this city, which led to the death of Katherine Johnson with the Atlanta Eagle raid. And I think that there is an appetite to think more holistically, but unfortunately, not enough people on council have that appetite. And I think that we have a great opportunity with this election, with this runoff election, especially, to have people on council who are going to think about changing the culture of public safety to address the needs of people who commit crimes versus just locking them away. People commit crimes. People don't commit crimes in the vacuum. There are underlying things that are creating that environment for people. And if you address those underlying issues, then you create an environment that's going to be safe and fulfilling and enriching for everyone.
Critical. And I would love to hear, you mentioned reimagining public safety. This has become a huge issue, particularly in the election. When you say reimagining public safety, what is your vision for that? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, for me, it's more recognizing that public safety is more than just policing. And I get that, based on our personnel benchmarks that we've established as a city, we're a few hundred officers short of where we want to be on that front. But what I offer is maybe the officers that we have just aren't using their resources to the fullest. And what I mean by that is, when I walk down my street or take my daughter to the park, not only do I see Atlanta Police Department, but I see Fulton County Sheriff, I see Georgia State Police, Georgia State University Police, I see Georgia State Patrol, I see the Department of Public Safety, I see Atlanta University Center, Atlanta Public Schools has a police department. Our MARTA, are these police forces talking to each other? Are they sharing resources? Are they really fully doing what they can with the resource that they have? I get that, based on the old models of how we've done public safety, yes, we need more police officers, but what if we think about that a lot differently and make sure that we're using the resources that we have? I want to change the culture of policing. I'm tired of seeing officers behind their steering wheel in their police cruisers going 60 miles an hour down my local roads, down my streets. They don't talk to anybody. They don't build relationships with anybody. I want to see more officers walking these neighborhoods, building relationships. I think about my time in the military. I was a platoon leader in Iraq for 14 months, and I was taught to get out of my truck, take off my helmet, and get to know the people that I was supposed to protect. I taught myself to read and write Arabic because I thought it would help me build better rapport with people. And I think our police officers should be doing more to be out in the community. And that means getting out of their cruisers. And I get that Atlanta is not the most walkable city in some of our neighborhoods that don't have sidewalks. And that's another issue that I hope we might be able to talk about this evening. But I think that to change the culture of policing, that means changing how policing is done. And I mean that from a tactical standpoint. Get out of your cruisers, talk to people. Separately, I think part of the challenge when it comes to police reform or police accountability is that we have, when we think about who leads public safety initiatives in the city, it's the police chief, but that police chief typically has been in the police force for 20, 30, 40 years. And it's hard to have any real sense of reform when someone has been in the system for that long. I would love to see the equivalent of, when I think about the military, we have a civilian department or a civilian secretary of defense. We have a civilian secretary of the Army, a civilian secretary of the Navy, and they might have served at some point in their careers. But the idea is to give them a different lens on how to make sure that the needs of those departments, the needs of those entities are being met. And I would love to see a quote unquote civilian at the top of our public safety hierarchy that also works with fire, that also works with the pre-arrest diversion program, so who can attack and address these issues in a much more holistic way than we've been doing. And that's not to say that the police aren't working hard to do what they need to do to keep our community safe. I'm just not convinced that the way we've been policing is effective. And I don't know if it's with the way we have designed our police beats or police zones, which have remained unchanged for decades. But doing the same thing again and again and again isn't really going to really solve these issues in a meaningful way. Separately, beyond police, I know I said, we have to think about these issues beyond policing, and I've spent the last 3 minutes talking about policing, which is 1 minute. Beyond that, we have to work with our youth and work with our young people. Unfortunately, that's where most of the crime is coming from, our young population. A lot of people are hopeless and helpless. Many times it's through no fault of their own. And I want to make sure we're offering programs, offering jobs, offering things that's going to make them think about their communities a lot differently. Our recreation centers have been closed for the last 2 years. And I think about the fact that that's a place that a kid or a young person or a young adult should be able to go to get training, to get opportunities to learn skills, our music program, robotics, things like that. And unfortunately, we don't even give them that. And so mentoring these young people, getting them involved in our city and our communities in the early level, I think is key to addressing public safety beyond just having a cop on every block, on every corner.
Thank you. And you got to this a little bit around the underlying issues related to crime. We know that, Atlanta often ranks either at #1 or #2 for income inequality. Our city's median annual household income for Black households is $35,048, while it is almost 3 times higher, or $102,693 for white households. How important is it to you as a council member and to close the racial wealth gap for Atlanta's citizens? And what are some of the policies that you would like to see put in place to help us address that issue?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely important, absolutely critical, because District 4, I tell folks all the time, Central Southwest Atlanta is some of our most historic communities, but it's also some of our most vulnerable communities. When you see where displacement has been happening at just such a rampant level, a household might be making $25,000 a year. It might be a house that was in that person's family for 2 or 3 generations, but next door is a $700,000 house that was able to sell for that because it's close to the Beltline. And so I don't think there's really anywhere else in the city where you can see that inequality much more present and much more viscerally than you can in many of our Southwest Atlanta communities, specifically in District 4. And so I want to make sure that anyone in Atlanta, whether you're from a rich background or poor background or in between, can thrive in this city. And that means making sure that you have access to opportunity and making sure that, I think Invest Atlanta is one of the most powerful tools that we have in the city to make sure people have access to good paying jobs, and we don't use it enough. I think about the fact that we spend millions of dollars giving away money to private companies or developers to come to Midtown, to come to downtown, and to build these huge campuses, and we don't get much public benefit in return. I know that the amount of money in which that we're taxing these huge, like I think about NCR's campus for Ponce City Market, and they're getting these big giveaways from both City of Atlanta and the Fulton County Development Authority. They're not paying enough to the tax digest to really allow us to get the benefit that we should be getting. So this is all to say, making sure that they have job guarantees for people in our communities, not only for entry-level jobs, but for manager-level jobs, making sure they're doing things like ban the box so people who have criminal backgrounds have an opportunity to have access to those same jobs, making sure that we have training programs. We have so many different universities in this city, and many of them are public, specifically Georgia State, specifically with Georgia Tech. One of the things we fought for when I was a spokesperson for the Turnerfield Community Benefits Coalition was making sure that young people in our neighborhoods around Georgia State had an opportunity, had a pipeline to attend Georgia State when they graduated. And unfortunately, we weren't successful in getting a community benefits agreement in that fight. But I think there's more opportunities for the city to use this leverage with the relationship that we have now with Emory, where Emory is part of the city of Atlanta. We have so many universities here, and I think we have to have partnerships to make sure that we can have a pipeline for our kids, because I know that we want to emphasize our young people to have good paying union jobs, trade jobs, and we should be doing that, especially through these big construction projects, World Cup's coming. So that's definitely something that we should be doing, but we also should be encouraging folks who want to go to college to be able to get low or subsidized, whether scholarships or opportunities with the entities that are already in our city. So I think education and training is a strong way out of poverty. And we have, like I said, we have the leverage. We have Invest Atlanta. We have, even when we are allowing for developments to come into our communities through our zoning and land use policies, we have the levers. We should use them, and that's why I want to make sure it happens.
So we've got about 15, 20 more minutes here before we close. And I'd like to turn to some questions coming in from community. And then before we get to that, a couple of things related to the election specifically. This is a runoff. The election cycle, about approximately only 25% of registered voters actually voted. What can you do to make sure that all residents are included in the political process?
Yeah, and I think that number, I still think about it every day since the election. We had fewer people vote in the 2021 election, at least in District 4, than we did in 2017. And it just breaks my heart. And so I think part of the reason why we have had so much disengagement is because on one hand, people are over it. People are tired of the promises from politicians. People are tired of the community meetings after community meetings after community meetings that get nothing done. People are tired of the surveys and not seeing anything come out of these quote unquote community engagement processes. And so people are fed up, people are over it, and people become disengaged. Separately, a lot of people, if they want to stay engaged, they don't have an ability to do so. Many people are working multiple jobs, rely on public transportation. And if you have an MPU meeting that meets once a month, it might not be easy or for someone who's working those jobs or relies on public transportation to make it to those meetings. So the city has to be more deliberate about coming to the people, meet them where they are. It's a lesson that I learned in my organizing work in PUV. Go to the corner stores, go to the MARTA stations, go to the bus stops, go to the churches, go to the places where people congregate, and bring the city to them. Let them know what's happening in their community. Don't wait for them to come to you at the right MPU meeting or neighborhood meeting. Don't expect that they're going to log into a Zoom to sit and through 3 hours of public commentary before a 7-hour full city council meeting. Come to the people, knock on doors, let them know what's happening. And I think another great way to get them engaged is, especially for our families that are renters or homeowners that pay a water bill goes to most of the residents in this city. Use that as a way to get more information beyond just what Watershed's push needs to be shared about, the fat fighter stuff and the municipal option sales tax renewal stuff. Use that as a mechanism to reach more people since the postage is already paid for. And so just think outside the box, but we've been knocking on doors since February for the campaign, and I'm gonna keep on knocking on doors after the campaign because I think everybody, whether you are engaged or not, your voice matters. And that's the same promise I've made to Atlanta University Center. Most of the institutions at Atlanta University Center, specifically Morehouse, Spelman, and Clark Atlanta University, are in the district, and those precincts had 2 to 3% voter turnout. And I've told these students this before, and I'll tell them again, like, even if they don't come to neighborhood meetings, even if they're not involved, I still want to hear from them what they want to see, because they live in this community too. They spend their money here. They live here. Their recreation is here. They're community members the same way homeowners are community members, the same way renters are community members, the same way our unsheltered population are community members. Go to the people. And that's a value set that I've held for a long time. And that's something I intend to bring with me to city council.
Great. So let's talk about, I really like this question. What's one issue in this race that's not receiving a lot of attention? And what would you do as a council member to address that concern?
Yeah, I think the one that is not receiving a lot of attention, and I tell you, is our number one issue that my campaign is trying to bring up, but the mayor's races, the press, the surveys that go out, that AJC is sending out, nobody's talking about it, but it's this issue of safe streets. And it's one around the fact that cars go too fast in our city, especially on our local roads. And it's gotten worse since the beginning of the pandemic, when commuters started staying at home. The freeways and our other local streets opened up, and it hasn't slowed down ever since, no pun intended. And we have to slow cars down. Slow streets are safe streets. And when you look at the crash data where pedestrians, cyclists, and everyone else, or people on scooters or people on wheelchairs, get hit by cars, it's in Black and brown and low-income communities in Southwest Atlanta. Cascade, Ralph David Abernathy, all the way down to Cleveland Avenue is unfortunately disproportionately happening in communities where we don't have sidewalks, we don't have crosswalks, we don't have the flashing beacons like they have in Midtown and East Atlanta. And because of that, the folks who rely on public transportation, 40% of Southwest Atlanta residents don't have a car and rely on public transportation to get around. In fact, with the most recent census data, the highest percentage of all of Metro Atlanta of people who rely on public transportation, who don't have a car or have access to a car, is in West End, is over by West End MARTA station, in that census tract at about 59%. And so the further southwest you go, the fewer sidewalks that you have. And people who rely on the bus, unfortunately, have bus stops that aren't protected. It's typically a pole in the dirt. There's no poured concrete. There's no shelter. There's no benches. So it's an undignified experience if it's raining or if it's 95 degrees. it's just not a great experience. And unfortunately, the people who need help the most aren't getting it. And so I want to see more infrastructure investment in Southwest Atlanta tied to pedestrians, tied to walkability and connectivity. Railroad tracks and highways separate people from jobs, separate people from education and training, separate people from parks. I want to make sure that we can reconnect our communities. That means pouring new concrete for more sidewalks in communities that don't have it. That means installing crosswalks. That means installing speed humps. Speed hump is about $4,000 a pop. For the speed humps over that are combo speed humps and crosswalks, it's about $10,000. It's not, nothing. But when I think about the fact that District 4 specifically is sitting on $2.5 million of funding that was allocated from the Renew Atlanta bond from 2016 that was supposed to go to Safe Streets. To me, that's just something that we can fix immediately on day one, or maybe, takes some time to pour the concrete and let it set and cure, but it's something we can do immediately. And I want to make sure that happens. But Safe Streets is the thing that folks aren't talking about. And I want to make sure that we are laser focused on making it easier for our city to install these things that are life and death pieces of infrastructure that we're not getting. The process to get a speed hump in your neighborhood until this year, what used to be you had to get 75% of your property owners on your block to sign a petition. Well, when you have a neighborhood that's 90% renter, and so you have to track down the landlord, and you have neighborhoods that have blighted properties, investor held properties hiding behind LLCs, which are behind other LLCs, it's nearly impossible to meet that 75% threshold. So we are having to play catch up with this institutional racism that has negatively impacted our communities and have made it harder to get the resources that we need. And we got to fix that. And we had to fix that yesterday because people are getting hurt. We've had 2,000 Atlantans in the last 5 years get hurt by speeding motorists. And this is specifically in the city of Atlanta, and many of them have been killed. I'm one of the Atlantans that have been hurt. I've been hit by a car in this city. I had to go to Grady. And when I think about my 14-month-old daughter, who I would love to have play in the street the same way that I played in the street when I was growing up, I'm afraid to let her outside unsupervised because, well, she's 14 months old, but you get what I'm saying. I'm afraid to let her out unsupervised because of how these speeders, these motorists treat our neighborhoods. And I think we can solve this through better investment in infrastructure. And we've been just too slow to the take to address it in a meaningful way.
Thank you. I learned a lot from that. That's a critical point. So we're going to close with this last question, and we'll give you 2 minutes. And this question was posed to the mayoral and council president candidates. What is the Atlanta issue that keeps you up at night? And what policies would you work to enact to get a good night's sleep?
I really like the phrasing of that. It is a lot different than what I've experienced, but I think it's an important question. And it's a big reason why I got into the race. And honestly, it's the issue around affordable housing. Thinking about the fact that so many Atlantans who built this city, who made Mechanicsville what it is, that made West End what it is, that made it so attractive for so many people who have moved here either to work or to go to school, folks can't afford to live here anymore. And a lot of that is we're in the housing crunch. We have a housing shortage in the city. Not enough housing has been built. We're building housing at half the rate that we did 20 years ago, and it's not enough to meet the demand. And not everybody wants to live in a 600-unit multifamily apartment building in Midtown, but also not everybody wants to live in a craftsman bungalow in Reynoldstown. We have to build more housing options for more people, and that can help address that supply and demand issue as well. But we have to build more housing. We have 877 acres of publicly owned land across the city of Atlanta. And to me, there's ripe opportunities to get more people in their homes. Part of that is, I've used Mechanicsville example a lot because I live here, but there's 25 acres of publicly owned land in this neighborhood alone. Many of those are parking lots that weren't included in the RFP when they sold Turner Field to Georgia State University. It's still owned by Atlanta Fulton County Recreation Authority. We're a downtown community. I can see skyscrapers from my front yard. There's no reason why we should have 25 acres of publicly owned vacant land in this neighborhood. Atlanta Housing Authority needs to have much more oversight and much more leadership coming from city council, coming from the mayoral administration to make sure they continue to build more housing, build more affordable housing units for more people. I think we need to look at our zoning. I know that it was a very contentious issue this year. Mayor Faroki's legislation wasn't really well communicated with the people, but it's an issue that I think needs to be discussed. And we essentially regulated ourselves out of being able to build more housing units. You can't build a duplex by right in my neighborhood, but you could 50 years ago. And what happens is you get much bigger houses on much smaller lots of land when 2 or 3 or 4 families used to live on that parcel. Now just have one. I think about the West End that in 1970 in that census had 20,000 residents, and today is only 5,000. And it's because we are converting these houses, these 3,000 square foot houses that used to have 3 or 4 families, these duplex that used to have 2 families, into single family homes, and we don't have a legal mechanism in place to convert it back. So no one policy is panacea, but we have to address all these different things to get more housing units online, hold these investors accountable who are holding on to these blighted properties that poison our communities and should be families living in those households. All these different things we need to do to get more housing units online, and I want to make sure that happens.
Thank you so much, Jason, for taking the time out for this community conversation tonight. We want to thank the community who joined us, our viewers, who realized the importance of getting out and listening to the candidates. I'd like to thank ACLU Georgia, Protect the Vote Georgia, and the Pi Alpha Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha for hosting this event. We also want to let everyone know that ACLU Georgia is partnering with League of Women Voters, Atlanta Fulton County, Protect the Vote Georgia, and the Pi Alpha Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha to continue this candidate series. And there are 2 more forums on Friday. District 1 will be at 6 o'clock. District 5 will be at 8 p.m. And just again, I would like to thank the host for inviting me to moderate. Thank you again to Jason for this, for your time and great information really tonight. And just want to remind everyone, as Hannah told us in the beginning, early voting starts tomorrow. Early voting starts tomorrow in Atlanta, and election day is November 30th. So make sure if you need to check your precinct again. If you didn't vote in the general, you can definitely vote in the runoff. Let's get those election numbers up. It's up to us. So thank you, everyone, and we will see you in the community.
Thank you.